Lionel, is that you?
There, I think I got it. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, Lionel.
Is this the first podcast since the last podcast?
Yes, it is.
You didn't even bother checking anything.
No, I've got it on the. I've got the electronic tote board up here now, man.
An electronic tote board.
I've updated it. I've gone electronic. She's no more whiteboards. It's all electronic, and away we go. I'm moving all over the place. This is really gonna be a good video.
Yeah, and over four dozen served.
Yes.
And billions and billions. Okay, so what the problem is here, this is part 3 of the Dave Abeles trilogy. And Dave was, as you now know, you've listened to parts 1 and 2. And Dave is unbelievably interesting. We've had a ton of fun. And basically, Bruce and I were starting to nod off. But we still had so much to talk to Dave about. We decided to carry on, trudge on, soldier on. We decided to soldier on.
We pressed on regardless.
We pressed on regardless of the conditions. And so now we had 3 parts of the 37-part Dave Abeles trilogy. And as you listen to this particular episode of Dave and his Dave does Jersey, Bruce and I start to talk about, and I initiated it, about Bruce. I don't think anybody's ever done 3 parts back to back to back. I think this is the first time we've ever had 3 parts back to back to back. I knew Marty McGurk had done 2 and other people had done 2, but we'd never done a 3-parter. And as I was driving around today, doing whatever my errands were today, it suddenly dawned on me that Smokin' Joe D'Amato, way back in August of 2015, when I started checking the files, had already done a 3-parter.
Yes.
So
we must apologize profusely to Smoking Joe for forgetting his wonderful initial 3-parter that set the stage for all other 3-parters, and also to our audience for possibly misleading them.
Yeah. As you're listening to this, you and I get more and more excited at the end but by then we were punchy because
I think that was it. Yes.
Yeah, we were punchy.
We went through one of Dave's night sessions. We were a little groggy enough to.
And so, so this is why we're doing this. And also, we didn't really have an intro to this particular episode.
No, we seemed to forget that as well, didn't we?
Yeah, we were listening. Well, we thought it was just going to be a segment. And as you'll hear me say, okay, this is a segment, maybe on, in May, it might be March, it might be before the Indianapolis 500, we don't know. And then Dave, who is just full of informative, interesting stuff to say, just kept going and going. And we literally that night talked to him for like almost 4 hours. We went from like 8:30.
4 entertaining hours.
4 entertaining hours. We're going to get Dave on again.
Oh, absolutely. Because there's so much we haven't talked about.
Yeah. And then we thought, this is a 3-parter. This is the 3-parter. We've never done a 3-parter. And then, wrong. Guess again. But in our defense, it's 4 years ago.
Yes.
4 and a half.
We have trouble remembering what we have for breakfast on those days. So
yeah, it's episode. I think it was like, I'm going to look right now. I think it's not that far away for me to look. I'm going to go to the big board. I'm going to go look on the big board, and I bet you I can find out pretty quick. I'll give you a little recap here. We're scrolling. All right, we go to 4. We're going to go all the way to. Okay, so it started. Episode 29 was Smokin' Joe D'Amato on Friday, August the 7th, 2015.
Wow.
There wasn't a whole lot of organization back then. We were kind of just flying blind.
Yeah.
And then his second episode was Saturday, August the 15th in 2015. So 8 days later, he did episode number 2. And here, what do I say? Here is Smoking Joe D'Amato Part 2. This story just gets better and better. We travel through the 80s with Joe and discover more and more and how he became one of the best model builders in the country. Fortunately, Lionel doesn't talk too much, so it's a great interview. And then part 3 is, let's see here. Part 3 is, don't tell me, is on Thursday, September the 3rd. Apparently back then we really had no kind of organization.
It was a lax schedule.
Yeah, it was
It's kind of like we were running extras when we had to.
Yeah, it was a very relaxed schedule. So then I say, here it is, the one you've been waiting for. It's the final episode of the 157-part Smokin' Joe D'Amato trilogy. I didn't think the guy was ever going to leave. After drinking all our beer and devouring all of our snacks, including 2 bags of Ruffles, all dressed potato chips, he's finally done. This episode covers Joe's position at Microtrains, and we learn all about N-scale plus some thoughts on Z-scale. So sit back and relax, and I'll offer you I'd offer you some refreshments, but Joe ate them all.
Right.
And that was part 3 of the Smokin' Joe. Oh, wait a minute. There's 4 parts to this.
There's 4 parts, Joe.
Holy mackerel.
Wait, there's more. If you act for midnight tonight, we'll give you part 4 of the Smokin' Joe trilogy. So
you know what, Dave? Forget everything we say. There's nothing special about what you did. Holy mackerel. What a screw up this is.
Yeah. But all those Smokin' Joe episodes are available through the website on Libsyn, are they not?
They still are available for free, yes.
There you go. So give a listen.
Exactly. I read that was the description for part 4. I'm going to read the description for part 3. In episode 3 of the 118-part Smokin' Joe D'Amato trilogy. In this exciting episode, we followed Joe back to Florida, where he immediately realizes he's made a mistake shortly after crossing the Alabama-Florida border. He spends the next decade revamping the world-renowned Disney World as well as helping all of mankind. Wow. 4-parters. You know what? And I was thinking today, and then we'll stop, because I think I've got to do this. I need to get a puck and a trophy with a puck in it for both Dave Abeles and Smokin' Joe for the natural hat trick.
The natural hat trick award.
Yeah. That's hockey talk for all of you folks out there. That's if you get 3 goals in a game. The natural hat trick.
In a row, 3 goals in a row.
Yeah, the true hat trick is 3 goals in a row. All right.
Yeah.
That's it. We've killed 8 minutes. We've made ourselves laugh. We've explained it all. We apologize for any inconvenience we may have caused. And Bruce, can you?
Yes. Okay. I don't know. What were you going to say? I'm thinking something else, but go ahead.
Yeah, you're thinking about the email address. Yeah. And that's all done at the end of this show.
Yes, as I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking that and now we bring you part 3 of the Dave Abeles trilogy.
And then you got to say Tom Jacobs' favorite part.
Subway chimes, go!
All right, so this is another segment. I don't know when this is on. This may be actually, let's pretend that it's like, who knows? Maybe it's May of 2020. Okay. Maybe it's just after the Springfield show. Maybe it's just before the Indianapolis 500. You never know. This could, yeah, or it could be the Saturday
Daytona 500,
or the Daytona 500. Maybe you've just listened to it before the
Coca-Cola 400.
Exactly. Who knows when this is?
Yeah, nobody knows until it shows up. But look, there it is.
Yeah. So there's no point. It's me, Bruce, the moderately agitated mail boy,
yes,
and Dave, the guy that runs all the stations for the New Jersey Transit System. 155 stations. 155 stations. Man, oh man.
You know, for the first time, I figured out how to get in here without screwing anything up.
Attaboy.
All right.
You're an old hand now.
Third time's the charm, pal.
Yeah, you're an old hand. You're an old hand
Yep.
now.
Yeah. Learning slow is better than not learning. So here we go.
Do you know anything about Dave? Just move that. Move your mic 2/64 of an inch away from your mouth there.
How's that? Is that better?
That's perfect.
Yes.
All right.
Do you know anything of the Proto Throttle by Iowa Scaled Engineering?
I do. I know of it. I've seen it in the reviews in Model Railroader. I believe it was in Model Railroader, and I certainly know a couple of people that have it. A couple of the guys in the Washington, D.C. area group have it. Jeff Mutter has a bunch on his Erie Lackawanna layout. And who's the fellow that has the fabulous Iowa Interstate layout? That's in Model Railroad Hobbyist.
Scott Thornton.
Scott.
No, there's another guy. There's another guy, yeah.
Yeah, he's in Model Railroad Hobbyist all the time.
I can't remember. I apologize.
He used to be on Train Orders all the time. Joe Atkinson.
Yes.
Joe wrote a really fantastic review of that once in Train Orders, and it was what a neat tool, what a neat opportunity.
The best way I heard it described is the biggest thing in electronics and the hobby since sound came in. I
could see that, between that and DCC.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And the only reason I was pointing that out is there's two guys, Mike Peterson and Nathan Holmes. They own Iowa Scaled Engineering. It's in Colorado. We're still kind of fuzzy on that whole naming thing, but the guy who had the original idea for it, Scott Thornton, who lives in Ames, Iowa. Nice guy, but basically he's dead weight. He just holds everything down. He's a paperweight. Scott's a paperweight, is what he is. That's it.
Well, we need those two.
I had to get that in there just because it's been a while since that's Scott's lot in life now. I just endlessly Scott. You know why I brought it up? Because Scott reminds me of you. Just a guy with a heart of gold, who doesn't want anything other than to make everybody else's life better. So he reminds me of you. So I just constantly torment Scott.
That's appropriate. You got to keep him honest.
Yeah, exactly. I love you, Scott. I love you, Scott. Can I have my $20 back? All right. So we've had Dave on a couple of times. In February was part 1 and part 2 of the 37-part trilogy. February of 2020. This may have even been on before the Dave Abeles. Let me slow down. This may have been on even before the Dave Abeles 37-part trilogy.
The Dave Abeles.
Dave Abeles. I know. Abeles actually rolls off your tongue. It must be because I'm Canadian and my vowels
I don't know.
Are softer.
It's funny. You get all sorts of different pronunciations. There's a large Hispanic culture in New Jersey, and you got Abeles.
Yeah.
Or Abeles. It depends on. So there's all sorts of different pronunciations. But think of Able Ease.
Yeah, that's okay. I can do that. Able Ease.
But we are sure it is Dave, right?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna. It is Dave, right? We're getting that right.
It's David. Yeah, David Todd. If you want to be technical, but Dave is universal. Yes.
Oh, your middle name's Todd.
Todd.
What happened to the CD player, Todd? I don't know, Margot.
And it was funny when I met David Todd McGill, another fella that it's an ex-con who's been on the Onondaga Cutoff a bunch of times. He's an engineer. He trained on Conrail. He lives up in Selkirk, New York. Works for Amtrak now as a locomotive engineer. He's actually been published recently in Rare Model Craftsman. Otto had him do a nice piece on him and his daughter. His daughter loves trains.
I just saw that one.
Fantastic.
How old is his daughter?
She's a couple of years older than my daughter. Actually, she's probably 8 or 9.
Okay.
If I had to guess. Yeah, I've never met Maddie. That's the daughter's name. But David Todd McGill, another guy with a heart of gold. Really interesting person. Made the most of some challenging situations. And super generous with coming down here and giving me some guidance on how to improve things on the OC.
I think I'm going to end up having to interview everybody that's on your regular crew.
They would love to meet you, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, the only guy though I'm concerned about is Rich Winiski because he told me he's boring.
I heard that rumor, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it might be fake news.
Yeah. and then I saw him on the news, but just before Thanksgiving, he was on the news. They interviewed him
Yeah,
on I-95 or something.
that's right. And he thought of you guys because of a nickname that he saw on a sign.
Really?
Yeah, I think that was the rumor, right?
I don't know. Now you've lost me.
Oh, maybe that was fake news too.
Yeah, maybe that's fake news there. But so long as he's thinking of us, because we know he's listening. That's the important thing.
Well, that's right.
Okay, so during the great thing about so if anybody's new to the podcast and they haven't heard Dave Abeles before, the great thing about Dave is he is wanting to share all of his knowledge with whoever wants to hear it. And so we didn't even get close to covering all the questions we had, and our very own Bruce, the moderately agitated mailboy, had some questions that we never got around to. So we thought, you know what? Let's just record some more stuff, and Bruce can ask him. So go for it, Bruce.
Okay. One of the things, the OC, you, in a roundabout way, I guess, ended up doing operations on it. Sort of like, hey, let's do operating sessions. You have one, and it worked out all right. Obviously, you've been successful and had a lot of people over and still do the operating sessions. But so I'd like if you could maybe sort of walk us through a typical operating session. But the other thing you've mentioned a couple times when we talked to you is nighttime sessions. You mentioned you have a nighttime session on the OC, but also you've operated on some other layouts with nighttime sessions. So maybe like walk us through a typical operating day on the OC, including your nighttime, and then what the fascination is with nighttime operations.
And before you start, Dave, just so everybody knows, the OC stands for the Onondaga Cutoff, and you can find out all kinds of stuff about it online if you go to how do you say it, Dave?
Onondagacutoff.blogspot.com.
Onondaga Cutoff. So it's ONONDAGA Cutoff CUTOFF.blogspot.com. If you go there, there's a really good blog with tons of information that David someday when he gets a chance is going to put it even into a more organized fashion.
And thanks to that, it's a great suggestion, and I appreciate it. And the other thing I've also found, if you just Google Onondaga Cutoff as two separate words, it almost universally pops up with the blog or one of the YouTube videos that's out there. So that's probably the easiest way to get in touch is that way. And of course, these podcasts will be recorded as well. So it's a pleasure to be back. Thank you, guys.
So be a little bit more specific, Bruce, can you? Like what?
Yeah, the operations, your 1994 era, thereabouts, I believe.
That's correct, yep.
For a typical operating session, you try to get around 15 or so guys. But what's involved with your operating session? Obviously, trains move, but trains move from where to where? What types of trains? What type of system are you using for operation? That type of thing.
All right. So essentially what we're doing is modeling a slice of Conrail and Conrail's operating pattern, the prototype schedules, the prototype freight movements, the prototype locomotives and consists, the blocking of the freight trains, so the way the trains are put together as they move from one end to another. We're representing a piece of Conrail's Chicago line, which is one of their arteries between the East Coast and Chicago. This is the one that's in central New York around Syracuse. So the prototype Chicago line ran about 50 to 60 trains a day in 1994. Primarily UPS intermodal traffic, auto racks, double stacks, quite a few, I think about 8 to 10 Amtrak trains a day, some unit coal trains going to Bow, New Hampshire, and Mount Tom in New Hampshire, depending on era, and then a bunch of manifest traffic to and from New England that would go up on that route. So our goal with an operating session is to capture the atmosphere of standing trackside on Conrail in Syracuse or around Syracuse in 1994. Based on my childhood trips up there and the excitement that I feel for that era of railroading. Because you got to remember, railroading in Northeast really was in the pits in the 70s. Everything was down. Stuff was getting abandoned. Conrail itself was born of the ashes of all these old railroads that were bankrupt. It took federal government bailout money, and in the United States, that's a big deal, to rescue the railroad industry, and Conrail was the result. So you had a generation of railroaders that really wasn't used to growth. They dragged through the bottom in the 80s. Things started to get better in the late 80s, but then there was another stock market crash. So 1994 was the first year-over-year growth that they were starting to see. And Conrail at that point realized they cut back too far. So they'd cut back yard tracks. They'd cut back, terminal capacity. And it turned out people wanted to ship by rail again as the economy improved. So, and as the service improved. So we're capturing this euphoric excitement, this rebirth of the Northeastern Railroad mainline scene with clean blue locomotives and trains that are getting longer and railroaders that are making some money again. And it's a growth mindset for the first time in a generation. So we run on, if you look at the way we do the railroad, my buddy Jack, who we've talked about extensively, has put together a 24-hour cycle that continuously restages itself on the layout. So we have a double-ended staging yard on the second level of the layout. Every through train starts or stops down in that staging yard. And the double-endedness allows us to cut engines off, run those engines to what we call the Island Engine Servicing Facility, which is a little separate yard where we keep engines during the sessions. And we can turn that consist of freight cars, piggyback trailers, stacked cars, auto rack cars. We turn that consist like you would turn a passenger train after a commuter run. You put different engines on it, either the same end or a different end, and then we run it as a different train symbol later in the session with different paperwork.
It's a good idea.
So, that's the Lionel. It's the only way we can capture the intensity and the density, 50 trains a day on a double track main line, when I've only got the space I have to work with, which is only about 20, 25, 26 by about 34.
Right. Yeah.
So we have only 5 tracks in staging. They're each between 60 and 80 feet long, which helps because you can double stack consists in there when you need to. But one of the real challenges for the train master position is to coordinate crews moving power to and from these trains. So you capture some of the terminal intensity. It's almost like standing on Ben's Bridge in Selkirk Yard in Albany, outside Albany, New York, watching Conrail or later CSX move locomotives from the servicing facility to the train consist to move them over the line. And we get the atmosphere around Syracuse, which is where trains swapped blocks at DeWitt Yard. On my railroad, it's called Onondaga Yard, and that's the block swapping facility. But you also get a lot of high priority intermodal and auto rack and Amtrak that blows through, and that everything else has to get out of the way. So you capture the chaos and the crossover moves, the parallel moves, the runarounds, things like that make mainline railroading exciting on a trunk line. But wherever we ended the last session is where we start the next on the fast clock. So after a session ends, I clean up a bunch of empty beer cans and I put all the paperwork in a big pile, and everybody goes on their merry way. And immediately after, the next couple of days, I'll sit down with my digital camera, my cell phone, and I will take a videotape of the yard, of each track of the yard. And the yard master of the session that just ended will have produced a turnover sheet. So he's got a list of what cars on what track are for which outbound train or which inbound train, which is what the prototype does. Every prototype yard master leaves a turnover for the next shift. And what we model is that shift change. So I'll type up a turnover with every car that's in the yard, usually between 60 and 90 cars that are in the yard, along with what they're supposed to be doing and where they're headed. I email that around to my group of dedicated managers, who all of whom really have an ownership stake in these operating sessions. So that'll include Jack Trabacchino, Rich Wisniewski, a couple other people that I work with over time, and they'll email me back comments or considerations, anything I might have missed. Oh, look, you have this car listed twice, or I know I remember this car being part of a different train, so it goes back and forth. And that allows me to use that turnover to make the paperwork for the next session. So Conrail used switch lists in 1994. There was no waybills or car cards. So before every session, I type up switch lists for the different trains, consist sheets for each train based on the actual Conrail paperwork from 1994. That gets passed around to all the wisdom keepers, with the session that I just spoke about. Then about a week ahead of the session, we'll schedule a setup night. This is one of Rich Wisniewski's ideas. So I used to clean all my track, all my locomotive wheels, do the paperwork, and make layout progress before I had kids. That was what I did every month. Now that I've got kids, I don't have time to do that every month. And Rich said, well, I'd love to come over and help you with the paperwork, and I can clean wheels and track too. And I said, all right, great. So Rich came over. Jack says, I'll come. So sure enough, we've got 5 or 6 guys now that'll volunteer their time on a Tuesday or Wednesday before the session to go through and do a setup night where we clean the track, clean the locomotive wheels, reconsist locomotives so that operators see a different set of engines on each train every time we operate, and generally make sure that we're in good shape for the next session. I send an email invite out. The first 15 to 18 people that sign up get the nod for the session. And I make exceptions. You want to make sure people have a shot. Sometimes people don't respond till later. It's a moving target, as Jerry Diedzik and other regular operators will tell you. It's hard to get a fixed number for an operating session, but the goal is to come up with a group of guys that you can trust to run the thing, but also to introduce some new people to the operation, to make sure that everybody's has an opportunity to have a good time. So once you got the list set, the paperwork is all set. We've had setup night, layouts ready to go. Everybody comes down. We generally order pizza at 5 p.m. on a Saturday. And people come in between 5 and 5:30. We eat pizza, drink some beer, trade war stories, talk about NJ Transit's latest elevator crisis, or service crisis, or positive train control, PTC, or which heritage locomotives. We haven't even talked about this yet. I was fortunate to be with a group of people that listened to my idea to have heritage locomotives on NJ Transit.
That was your idea?
That was my idea.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Oh, come on.
And I got
that time out here. Give me a freaking break, will you? I mean, I am not a professional. I cannot organize this way. You're going to have to leave. You're too interesting.
That's why we have to keep talking to him. We keep getting gems out of him.
I know. It's like, that was mine. Okay. All right. How are we going to do this, Bruce? Because I don't want to miss out on the heritage thing. I have a question.
Well, we'll come back to that. We can come back to that.
All right. Carry on.
It'll be an extra add-on.
Yeah, it'll be an add-on.
So continue.
Okay. Just let me ask one thing. Sorry, you've got everything ready to go.
Yeah.
Obviously, emphasize on mainline trains. Is there any locals and stuff thrown in there for the fun of it, or is it all mainline through stuff?
No, in fact, there's a variety of locals. We run. There's 2 different yard jobs. There's 4 different Conrail locals. 2 work the main line. Some work one of the branch lines. I have a short line that comes into interchange with Conrail. I call it the Manoa and Euclid. It's a Morristown and Erie property, which lets me use my Morristown and Erie Alcos from New Jersey on a fictional short line that comes into interchange with Conrail. So they have 2 jobs a day, and one of them runs all the way out to the paper mill and does about 4 hours of switching out at the paper mill. So yeah, there's a lot of local traffic. That's one of the challenges, is that those guys have to work around the higher priority intermodal and passenger. And so they have a little bit more waiting to do, a little bit more car shuffling to do, a little bit more paperwork. But again, there's switch lists that are provided, so it's up to the crew to figure out how to put the cars in. So yeah, we have a lot of that stuff that goes on, and people will select the jobs they want. We start a fast clock usually around 6 and run 4 hours of 3-to-1 fast clock with the CTC system. Conrail's main line is all CTC. It's all centralized traffic control. Centralized traffic control basically means that there's a dispatcher or an operator that lines signals to provide indications for train movement. So crews on the trains watch the signals like they do on the prototype. I have a working signal system, all integrated with my CTC. That is driven by JMRI, Java Model Railroad Interface, on the computer. which is linked up to my NCE control system. NCE provides the block detection, which I installed. JMRI translates that into the software, which allows us to look at which part of the track is open and which part is not. And the signal indications are based upon what track is available and not occupied by equipment. So we use the Crandic Automated Traffic System, CATS, C-A-T-S, which is an overlay to JMRI, and that's how we built the dispatching system. So it's literally dispatched from a PC.
All right,
And
hang on. What's that called? The Crandic? How do you spell that?
I believe it's called CRANDIC, the Crandic Automated Traffic System. And if you Google JMRI for CATS, C-A-T-S, it should pop up pretty quickly. It's an add-on to the JMRI system.
Okay.
A guy named Rodney Black put it together. And it's a neat, prefabricated piece of software that does 90% of the programming for you for signal control.
Okay.
So there's certain things that you have to put up with, certain little idiosyncrasies. Not every aspect is possible, but 95% of them are. And so on my railroad, we are 100% NORAC compliant with our signal aspects. So they are exactly what would have appeared on those track arrangements on Conrail on the former New York Central in 1994.
And NORAC stands for?
The Northeast Operating Railway Advisory Committee.
Okay. Just one question I had about your layout that's a pretty quick answer, although I'm not sure there's such thing as a quick answer with Dave, but maybe this will be it.
I've been told that before. Continue.
Are there any real town? Like I know it's your layout is it's not an actual stretch of track. It's not a prototype layout per se, but it's Conrail. And the trackage is freelance. So are there actual town names are those town names made up as well?
Nope, it's actual town names. Part of my backdrop is the actual city of Syracuse, and I feel it's really important on a proto-freelanced route, a freelanced route around town, to link as much of the culture and atmosphere and scenery to the prototype as you can.
Right.
So I have the Syracuse skyline and part of the backdrop, and the Carrier Dome is there with Lawrence and Hall up at Syracuse University, where I actually lived for 2 years when I was at SU. And we have Fayetteville, one of the towns in central New York. Camillus Lumber is one of the industries. Camillus is a town in central New York outside Syracuse. Iroquois paper is loosely modeled off the Solvay paperboard plant in Solvay, New York.
Okay, so it's actual town names and a track plan to fit because this is what you wanted to model.
Well, and because I couldn't fit the prototype track plan in my little basement.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
DeWitt's a massive yard. 4-track curves and 4-track interlockings are gigantic. So to make it plausible, I didn't feel comfortable having reverse curves or having the wrong backdrop for a certain yard. I really wanted to make sure that people weren't distracted by the prototype. Like I feel that a lot of modelers, this is Chatham, or this is Toronto Union Station, and it's like that. Guys, what are you kidding? Like I appreciate, I know what you're trying to accomplish, but how is that any more prototype than what I'm doing?
Yeah, exactly. I got to
so it's the atmosphere is I really want people to focus on the operation more than the specific detail of the location, if that makes sense.
You want to make the atmosphere to replicate that area, but you want people to concentrate on the operation of the railroad or the trains themselves.
Yeah, basically set up so the railroad is plausible. That's
if you went out there, one of my biggest goals.
Yeah, if you went out and grabbed the topo maps there, you could plot your railroad on that and nobody would be any the wiser.
And Bruce, I actually did that. I actually have the topo map and graphed in the railroad, which is why the Syracuse backdrop is where it is. The railroad is built on roughly the alignment that it would, that's exactly how I did it. Because that's, to me, that to make it, I love the area so much, I had to make it plausible. I had to make it believable for myself. And that's exactly the approach I took.
And I have a question that I really should never ask. Maybe I should save it for later.
I'll go for it.
I'll ask the question, but I won't expect them to answer it now because soon it'll be next month. I would love to have been. So, what were the discussions like when you and your boyhood friend, who you met in grade 5, and you guys have been trained? You're the manager of all the stations, and your friend Jack is the manager of the scheduling for New Jersey Transit. What were the discussions like? I'm assuming he was involved in the planning of the railroad. I'm wondering what the discussions were like between you two guys to get this final track plan in place, and was there anybody else involved?
We had some heated debates. We had some real serious discussions because, of course, I'm the one financing the whole damn thing, and you work for the railroad, you're not going to get rich. That's not how it works. So, Jack came down. We ran the trains that first operating session, October 25th, 2011, and it went pretty well. There were 6 or 7 of us. We ran some trains, drank some beer, had a great time. And Jack, a couple weeks later, says, "You need a crossover right here at CP 294." And I said, "Well, I've already got one." He's like, "It's in the wrong direction." I said, "So you want me to cut into my main line and add a crossover? Like, it's like $50 in switches, 2 more tortoise machines." He's like, "You need it." I said, "Why?" He says, "Because if you have a local working the paper plant, which isn't even open yet, and you try and run a train down that way, you're not going to be able to access these tracks and staging without it." And I said, "You're right." All right. You're right. Okay, fine. I'll cut into the damn main line. Here we go. And then there was other things where he said, "Well, I think we should do a universal interlocking here." And I said, "I don't want to have that many. No, it's got to be open and running." And I won that argument. So we went back and forth, pages and pages of emails. And then when Nick Anshant got involved later doing the signaling, it was the same thing. We had pages of email debates about the speed through interlockings and, what aspects should be here, because you can't have a medium approach into an approach medium, and you can't have have an approach medium. It was, and again, I'm not even using the right terms because I let the experts be the experts. And Nick made a very compelling argument for certain aspects, and so it was really organic like that. We argued about stuff as it came up, and we improved it step by step based on a logical argument that proved why it should be done a certain way.
All right. Okay.
So complete hoot.
Yeah, I mean, and how many years how many year process was that? Like from beginning, was Jack there? I'm assuming Jack was there right from the very beginning.
He was there from the beginning, yes.
And Jack's last name again is
Trabacchino.
Is that right?
Which is Trabachin is a nut. O.
Holy mackerel. And so I'm assuming he was there right from the beginning.
Well, yeah. I mean, we were talking about building a layout before I even had a house. I mean, that's been a dream of mine for the longest time. So it worked out. It worked out great to have somebody with his critical knowledge of rail operations. I mean, it's safe to say that my operation without Jack would be impossible. There's just no way. And what's cool is that he put it to paper to a point now where we can run it without him, which is great.
Time out. Bruce?
Yes.
I have a question for you, but it has a preamble.
All right.
Do you remember the very first time we went to Springfield many, many years ago, 10, 15 years ago?
Yes.
And we had been in the Better Living Center for an hour or two.
Yes.
And in fact, we weren't that far from where the City Classics booth was.
That's true.
And I turned to you and I said, "Have we died and gone to model railroad heaven?"
Yes.
I have another question that's kind of like that.
Okay.
Have we stumbled onto the penultimate model railroader? Have we stumbled?
Pretty close to it, I'd say.
Have we stumbled onto the stereotype, the prototype model railroader?
Well, he's not a prototype. He's a proto freelancer, but he does it the way he does it the real way.
I mean the actual model railroader.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Have we stumbled onto that? Like all model railroaders have been designed after this.
Yeah, he certainly would fit the model.
I mean, he's had a lifelong friend since grade 5. They both end up working for the New Jersey Transit System. They both have important jobs with the New Jersey Transit System. They have their friend Rich Winiski, who works for the New Jersey Transit System. I mean, we may have stumbled onto something. I feel like it's one of those movies where like, like
Hey, pounded through the jungle for 6 weeks, and there it is. The
yeah.
clearing.
You guys are too kind. It's a lot of fun, and I feel very, very thankful to have close friends to work with, but to have people that you can trust with something you love this deeply. I mean, talk about a privilege. It's a thrill to be able to have guys like this that are willing to give their time and their energy to jump into a railroad that is in somebody else's basement. It means the world to me. It's one of my favorite parts of the hobby, and it's thanks to them that it's come to life.
And none of that negates the fact that Scott Thornton is a dead weight over at Iowa Scaled Engineering. Like that doesn't none of this.
You keep bringing that up.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You keep. This is a consistent theme, Lyle.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Something I stumbled upon.
Yeah.
So anyhow.
Yeah, we can finish up the operating session.
You've had your beer, you've had your pizza. The guys are ready to run trains. What's next?
Down we go. The train master, who is usually Rich Wisniewski, but sometimes Jim Dalberg, will say, "Okay, who wants to switch on Onondaga Yard? Raise your hands. Oh, you did it last time. Let's give somebody else a chance." Or, "Hey, you could do the Morristown and Erie today, or the Minoa and Euclid, the M&E. Or how about you run DE30, the DeWitt local that comes into interchange at Onondaga?" And so, he scrambles those eggs pretty well. New guys are assigned with a veteran to qualify. So the veterans will generally be handed a TV 77 or TV 202 or ML 403. These are the train symbols. And through trains. So a rookie will get basically a mentor to take them on a couple qualifying trips around the railroad as part of the regularly scheduled operation. That way they can learn where the signals are. They can learn where the hidden trackage comes and goes. Just get a feel for the railroad, get a feel for talking on the radio. The only way you can talk to the dispatcher is using the radio. So that helps a lot. That helps to provide a real air of authenticity. The scanner traffic is hilarious. If you go upstairs to take a leak, or you go outside to, get some fresh air or something like that, and you keep your radio with you, it sounds like being trackside in 1994. Conrail TV 202 to the Mohawk dispatcher, sitting here at CP 277 with stop signal. Mohawk 277, Mohawk to TV 77. Yeah, you're coming up on a crossover move there, so take it. Keep your eyes open and it sounds like the scanner, which is a hoot. It's almost like you're modeling the radio as well as the rail operation. And for 1990s, it's very prototypical. It's exactly what you would have. So learning that stuff takes some time. Rookies take a little time to catch on with that. And we find that some of the best operators are actually rail fans because they've listened to the scanner. They know how to talk on the railroad, and they're familiar with more modern operations with cabooseless trains. So the session will continue, and then the scenery is late. I would say it's late summer, early fall. So it's kind of hard to do a midwinter operating session or that's pretty much the only season I can't stretch to accommodate. So the paperwork is all prepared for a certain Friday or Saturday in 1994, sometimes 1995 or 1996, depending on what locomotives we want to run. We'll start from where the last session ended, and that means some sessions start in the dark. It means some sessions start in the daylight. And then I look up the calendar for that day in 1994 to find out when the sun set and the sun rose. And then I use a manual dimmer system to manually dim and then raise the LEDs to capture the atmosphere of declining light and then light raising in the morning. And we run right through the night. So very rarely do you see a TOMT, which is a Toledo to Metuchen train that ran the Chicago line at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. That train almost never runs when the lights are on, ever, because it runs at night. So, trains like SLSE, which was a St. Louis to Selkirk train in the 1994, that train always had all kinds of crazy run-through power from out west. Santa Fe, Southern Pacific. And the damn thing runs at 2:00 in the morning. And all the rail fans who are running their trains say, oh, man, look at this. This awesome consist of SP and Rio Grande or whatever it is, an HO scale. It's running in the dark. Why can't you run this during the daylight? I said, well, it's because it's 2:00 in the morning. Lights, that's not light at 2:00 in the morning, not unless you live in Alaska in the summertime. So, so we play with it. We have fun with it. And we go through about 12 hours of the 24-hour day, and we come to I would say a soft stop, but not usually a firm stop. We don't usually just turn the layout off. We'll get people back down to staging or make sure people are to a spot in the switching where we can figure it out. We pause it. There's usually a little group camaraderie afterwards. People will talk, shake some hands, talk about the family and what have you. And then everybody goes on their merry way into the night at 10:30 on New Jersey weekend evening. And then I'm ready to do my turnover and start it again. We try and do it once a month.
Okay, so
now why the fascination? And I think I know the answer with the night. Because some will say the nighttime is the right time.
Thank the Lord for the nighttime. Forget the day. A day of up tight time. Baby, chase it away. Get a relaxation. It's a time to groove. I thank the Lord for the nighttime. I thank the Lord for you.
Well, because growing up, I bought my dad's 1989 Dodge Caravan, which I have faithfully modeled on the Onondaga cutoff. I bought it with lawnmower money and with painting house money from my summer jobs when I was a junior in high school. And I took care of it. I actually made the trip to Syracuse with me when I was up there getting my education. So I would drive that thing all over the place looking at trains. That minivan went where minivans are never supposed to go. Every right of way, dirt roads, up culverts, across the creeks. We got stuck a couple times, but you figure it out. And a lot of time, college kids are up until all hours of the night. I was no exception. So I'd go out and I'd watch the Lakeshore Limited come west. That's Amtrak's train from New York to Chicago via Syracuse and Buffalo. And it would come west with 2 or 3 F40 PHs, a couple baggage cars, some mail handling cars in that era, and then a whole slew of cool heritage equipment, SP diners and New York Central coaches and all this stuff. And then some Amfleet cars. It was a big train. And the coolest part is that the speed limit for passenger trains west of Syracuse on that water level route, even in the 90s, was like 79 miles an hour. So you go out there and stand out there in the dark and listen to the crickets. The approach signals would come on, so the train was getting close. Then you hear the horn, then you hear the scream of the F40s, and this thing was on you in a blink of the eye, and it blew past you like a storm on the ocean. Unbelievable. And you're watching the windows swash by at night, and you can see the people going to bed because it's this time it's 11, 12 at night, and then gone, and all you see there's the dust, and then the markers disappear on this long straight tangent into the dark of the central New York night. It's just a magical experience. So the railroad runs 24/7, and railroading is different in the dark. It's a compelling part of railroading, and working for the prototype. I've worked a lot of nights, and the camaraderie that carries you at night is really an important part of rail operations. And I wanted to capture that energy down here, and we've done a pretty good job of it. And we definitely have that flavor.
So, okay, let me ask you, how do you determine when to stop? Like you say, you just pick up where you left off on your next operating session. Like, how do you determine when to stop? Like you just, is it the next deal, next hand is the last hand? Like, how do you determine that?
Usually, we've got the 12 fast hours planned out. So we know what our last train is going to be before the session starts.
Okay.
And as you've got 9 or 10 people running trains, and you've got 25 or 26 trains to run. So almost everybody gets 2 or sometimes 3 trains. And by, you go through a written, cadence of operations. And the last train tonight is going to be, TV6. Okay. So you hand out TV6. There's no more trains to hand out. And as people come off their assignments, they grab a beer and they rail fan for the rest of the session.
Okay. And what kind of beer would that be?
Well, am I going to lose points on the Kelly questions if I tell you?
No, actually, on one of the, we got sidetracked, oddly enough. We got onto another subject, but there was Bruce, and you could help me.
Sidetrack?
Yeah.
No, we wouldn't get sidetracked.
Yeah, sidetrack. What are you talking about?
What are you
Sidetrack.
talking about? Sidetrack?
So we do a
well,
wide
wait a minute.
variety of craft.
Hang on. I'm still talking here, Dad. So in part 2 of his 37-part trilogy,
Yes.
he started talking about the Kelly questions.
Yes.
And he started talking about how I'd asked him who his most influential model railroader was.
Yes.
And then he said, that question. And then he started to say in part 2 of his 37-part trilogy, outside of the Kelly questions, he started to analyze that question and how it could be answered. Is it not, in fact, in the rules that you can never, once the Kelly questions are over, you can never gain points, but you can, in fact, lose points?
It is the little-known clause. If you look on page 394, paragraph 25, subsections C, D, E, and F, that if you start questioning the Kelly questions, which you should never question the Kelly questions because that's kind of like crossing streams and Ghostbusters and stuff like that, that you can indeed lose point post Kelly questions. So
that's right.
I remember his score wasn't that great.
Yeah,
but it's starting to get less great.
It's getting less and less all the time.
Fair enough. Okay. It's a wide variety of craft beer. So everything from stouts to IPAs to lager. I mean, but it's also whatever people want to drink. So people will bring Yingling or Labatt or
any cider beer.
Oh, Rich Wisniewski is a huge cider fan, and I enjoy ciders too. Yes.
Okay. All right. So then, okay, I'm
yes.
All right. I had a good question. I can't remember what it was. All right, Bruce, go ahead.
So it's funny how basically it's the culture of the night which has attracted you to include it, because it's so I've in the past usually daytime job, but there's been projects I've been on working night shifts, and it's a whole different thing when the sun goes down. It's just a whole different sense of being out in the world, and you're surrounded by darkness, so you're more acutely aware of what is going on in your immediate vicinity because you have to concentrate.
It's a survival skill. That's correct.
What kind of there's no pineapple pizza, is there?
No.
Wow. Another subsection of no, don't ever do it.
Nobody's asked for it. I mean, hey, if people
no,
but
you don't
it's not my bag.
You do not mix fruit and cheese. It doesn't work.
No, I don't mix salty and sweet if I can avoid it.
Exactly. Do you ever have ketchup on your hot dog?
No.
Of course not. All right, Gary. Go ahead.
I'm going to be laughing about this for the next 3 days. This is fantastic.
I know what I was going to ask. You recently had an article published about your night riding.
I did. It was my first ever. I'm still pinching myself. It was my first ever cover shot on Model Railroader, about night running, about night operating sessions on the Onondaga cutoff. Yes, and I really feel very thankful for Tony Custer and for Jerry Diedzik, who took me under their wing over the last couple of years and really tore up what I was writing and really gave it the gusto. And I got a lot of red ink back. I had a lot of learning to do about how to put together, a good piece of writing. And another one of my regular operators, a guy named Joe Relation, who's actually a lawyer for a major chemical company. He has been an unbelievable godsend for now. I can send him something. He tears it up first. And so when the Model Railroad guys get it, it's already been proofread and there's not a lot of obvious mistakes in it, which is wonderful. So Joe's been a huge help with that. But Tony took a chance on me thanks to Jerry putting us in touch. And the first article I ever had published was in Model Railroad Planning, MRP 2018. Tony Custer put together with me an article on the Onondaga Cutoff called an 1840s layout or 1990s layout in an 1840s basement, which is the overarching story of the Onondaga Cutoff. So a lot of what we've talked about over the last couple interviews is covered, as far as the genesis of the railroad is covered in that article.
Here's a really obscure question. I found your home on Google Maps, Google Satellite Views. Where does everybody park?
On the street.
Okay.
Yep. It's legal to park on both sides of the street as long as you're not there for more than 24 hours.
Oh, okay. So it's not a busy
And
street.
usually the sessions don't last 24 hours. Sometimes, sometimes the guest bed is occupied depending on the amount of beer we indulge in. It's usually not like that, obviously, but
No. What's the longest session you've had?
We did one of the guest sessions for the guys from down in DC. I think I operated a total of about 6 hours that day.
Okay.
So we had paperwork set ahead. So 6 hours of operations and an hour for lunch. So it was a full day of operation, and that was a lot of fun because when you start turning trains, predicting the blocking and how that all works out is pretty challenging. So it was fun to put the paperwork together for that.
So that must have been more than 12 hours.
Yeah, we did almost 18. We started at dawn, went through the whole day, the whole night, and then made it into the next morning, which is pretty cool.
So then the next session after that, did you start at that point where you left off?
Correct. Yep.
So is the start and the finishing point kind of a moving target? It's never. You might operate 12-hour sessions for maybe 3 or 4 sessions, and you'll have guests, and you'll have an 18-hour session. So it's kind of a moving target where things start and stop.
That's correct. And one of the beauties of having a professional rail service planner do the schedule and the staging plan is that, you know what, it's going to be kind of a late night. Like, why don't we cut it off 2 hours early? Okay. And we just stop the session. And there's nothing that has to happen to you could just stop it and then start it again next time at that same spot. It restages itself. There's no staging of freight cars between operating sessions ever.
Okay. What about you turn the lights off? What is it? What can you see? Like, are some of the buildings lit, or what is it?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
That's all the locomotives have working headlights. Some of them have working ground lights, which I'm in love with. But it's going to be years before I have time to add that to everything. But you have to have a working headlight to have a leader that's a good leader. Most of the buildings that are in place are lit. And we've got yard lights in the Island Engine Yard and also Onondaga. There are floor lights. There's lights and staging, so you can see what you're doing down there too, like sort of a orange Christmas light looking thing. So you get kind of that sodium vapor feel down there.
So you have lights so people can see where they're walking.
Correct. Yep. Some safety lights to make sure you can see where the floor changes. It's it's an old basement, so nothing's level. You got to be a little careful with that. And the grade crossing that comes down, that's got lights, so when it lights up the darkness, and a lot of it, and the signals at night add a whole lot of light, which is a lot of fun. Really has a lot of depth.
I would guess so. Did we cover all your questions, Bruce? Did Bruce leave?
No, I'm here.
Oh.
I'm just looking at some of the pictures in his MR article, and the shots around the engine facilities at night, they're absolutely spectacular.
Oh, thank you very much.
And did you do that, Dave? Of course, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess photography is fairly simple for you because you've always been a rail fan.
That is such an excellent point. And like, if there's something that listeners might take away from this, it's that so much of our hobby builds on itself, and the principles of good photography are universal. I mean, you have to deal with different f-stops or whatever when you want depth of field when you're playing with your models, but a good composition and good lighting or good composition and good lighting. So that's exactly, I in those years that I wasn't really modeling in my 20s, it's an opportunity to go out and take lots of pictures of trains outside. And so I did that. I learned a lot about what not to do. A lot of, was able to emulate some fantastic photographers and learn from what they did and ask them questions. So yeah, all the photography in that article was stuff that I was able to do with some guidance from Tony Custer and from some others at Model Railroader. And different temperatures of light. Another guy you interviewed, Phil Monette from New York City.
Yeah.
He's a professional lighting guy on Broadway and a brilliant model railroader, quite an author, and a genuine character in his own right. One of my yard masters here on a regular basis, actually.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, Phil's a spectacular lighting master, I guess is what
he's the guru. Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
yes.
that's what he does for a living. Yeah.
So he actually built the light towers that are in my Onondaga yard because, let experts be experts. And he volunteered to do it. I said, great. So he did that. And so the cool part about Onondaga yard is that 1990s, Conrail was an amalgamation of these different systems. So they when they would have done lighting for an upgrade for the yard facility, they would not have done an upgrade for the engine terminal. And so the engine terminal would have been done separately, which means probably a different style of light, different light temperature. And so by using some prototype experience where I've gone out and watched trains and the way NJ Transit does things at night, with different light colors, different temperatures of light in that engine yard, you capture that feel of you got the fluorescence outside and the incandescence inside or the halogens inside, and you get those different temperatures. And I think it adds a lot to the prototype feel. So thank you, Bruce. It's a high praise. I appreciate it.
Here's a question for you. We'll probably start winding this down, even though we could go for another 2 days. Okay, so you're obviously welcoming. You like having operating sessions. I was talking to another model railroader who there's no point in naming his name, but he's known to the listeners. But he's very particular about who he lets into his layout and into his home about operating the layout, and he's not really keen on, he's and so where do you stand on that?
I certainly am aware of people that don't appreciate, the people that, you're just playing with toy trains. Well, no, I strongly disagree with calling it playing with trains. We're not playing at all. We're modeling an operation. We're having fun doing it, but it's still part of our modeling and part of our pride, and part of what we're doing is learning about history through modeling an operation while having fun. It's all the same nut. So there is that side of things, but I feel very strongly that I've been very fortunate to have the confluence of a patient and wonderful wife, who loves having our kids around, who's a great caretaker for the kids, and who lets me do a lot of railroad stuff, despite the fact that we've got little kids that require some attention. To have wonderful mentors like Jack, like Rich Wisniewski, mentors in photography, people like Al Tillotson and a fellow named Ian Clark from Vermont, Scott Snell from these rail fan photographers, Mike Danneman, guys I've looked up to my whole life. Like, all of this stuff sort of comes together. And so I feel very thankful and very gracious for having the opportunity to even be able to participate in this the way that I do. And so I think, and this is where my dad's and my mom's spirit comes through, because I've been so fortunate to be able to be where I am with all this stuff and to be able to realize what I wanted so early and put it together with the help of other people, it's now my responsibility to share that with other people.
Okay.
I don't feel that it's even an option. I think it is a responsibility for layout owners to open themselves to letting other people learn about what we're doing. If we want this hobby to grow and to become something that brings people together, we need to be less concerned about if a stanchion gets broken on our precious toy model and more concerned about getting young kids involved who appreciate it, not kids that are going to trash it or make fun of it, but kids that appreciate it and new people that appreciate it. So, these RPM meets that are so common now, they've been great for the hobby in general. Right. And a bunch of my regular operators are guys that came here for open houses as part of Ted Diorio. Ted Diorio had an RPM in Clark, New Jersey a bunch of times. Some of the Philadelphia RPMs, the local RPMs. Look, you get interested people that come in and maybe they've never operated a train before. And they see, and when I have an open house, I call it a pro session for my. So I have, I especially invite 6 or 7 or 8 of my regular guys that I can trust to run the railroad without my input. I give tours to newcomers, but the railroad's not sitting there turned off. It's not even just turned on. We actually will run a piece of the operating session during an open house.
Okay.
So that people come in and see the operation. They see the railroad coming to life.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you sell it. It's important to have new people coming into operations to keep the hobby growing.
All right. What kind of operating system do you use? Like, what kind of DCC system do you use?
The NCE Power Pro, the 5 amp with 2 add-on boosters. And then with JMRI, we can use the fabulous the Y throttle and the engine driver on the iPhone.
Right. Okay.
So a bunch of guys bring their iPhones and they all have the app. There's a free version of it called Y throttle Lite or engine driver Lite. And when you've got sound equipped locomotives, it's fabulous because you can program in the sounds to JMRI on each engine.
Right.
And instead of having to guess what F3 does or F6 does, your phone just shows you what it does.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is wonderful. Cool. Oh, it's so much fun. Yeah. So when you select Conrail 5023 on my operating session, it's a B36-7 that I kit bashed a couple of years ago out of an Atlas B37. If that's on TV6 and you dial it up as your lead locomotive, you've got headlight control, horn control, bell control, but you can also turn the Sanders on. You know which button does the dynamic brakes. You know which one does the air compressor.
Yeah. Okay.
So you get
really cool.
Which is a lot of fun. And I don't have to buy, a dozen $150 throttles.
Yeah.
So I've got a handful here, and it works out great. Works out fantastic.
You're 100% correct about Tony Custer and Jerry Diezik and the help they would give you in writing and all that stuff. However, I have scanned through your blog more than once, and you already were a fairly accomplished writer and photojournalist. So I would take that because as you know, your blog does make me mad for one reason, because when you brought up that about rebuilding that particular locomotive, I did find that article, but it was not easy to find. So I wish there was a real easy way, a list of all the articles or something like that.
It's a great suggestion, and I'm going to look into that starting tomorrow. That's an excellent point. Thank you.
So okay, let me ask this question again. See if I can. All right. So a bunch of guys come from Washington, and maybe they're bringing if they're bringing 2 or 3 guys you don't know, you just assume that these guys wouldn't bring them if they didn't know they could operate. Is that a fair?
Well, if people are interested, I'm open to accommodating their interest. Look, there's a bunch of local guys. They love their timetable train order, and my CTC Conrail diesel thing. They love little steam engines and timetable train order, and they're just not interested in this era.
Right,
and that's okay. So sure. I feel a little.
I guess my question is more about, like, how do you, for other people that would be interested in this question, because I know how I did it, how do you deal with the differing levels of operators? I mean, there's just no way that some people can operate as well as other people, and they may never get to that level. How do you deal with the different levels of individual operators?
I believe in the gentle but firm approach. So, yeah, I'm very fortunate to have the guys we've been talking about continuously now, Jack and Rich. Rich is a wonderful mentor, very patient, very persistent. Jack as well is a little bit less patient than Rich, but that's not saying much because Rich is very, very patient. And there's other regular operators, Al Tillotson, who's a regular yardmaster, Chris Lee, we were talking about as a dispatcher. These are guys that know the operation here very, very well. They're all people that worked on the railroad in real life, and the real railroad is it's not loaded with super smart people necessarily. There are smart people, but there's also people that have to work hard to learn stuff. And part of the culture of the Onondaga Cutoff is to coach people that are interested. You how do you put it? Look, you can you want people that have the right attitude.
Right.
People that are excited, people that are enthusiastic, people that have, that they want to buy in. If they have no operating experience or they're not as good an operator, well, those are things we can coach. Those are things we can teach on. Those are things where maybe they are good at one thing but not another. Maybe they don't like reading signals. They don't understand it, but they love switching. Well, there's a yard job. There's very little signals on the yard job. There's the M&E job, which has no signals at all until you come over and do your interchange. Or you can pair them up with somebody that covers for some of the things they're uncomfortable with. So it's sort of a basic management exercise in making sure that people
Is this a fair analogy? I'm sorry, I cut you off there.
No, go ahead. Some people are okay with being cut off, and some people get upset. That's all right.
Well, come on, it's my podcast. I should get a chance to talk once in a while.
Look, I'm trying to bust your balls, and it's not working. So I gotta do what I can do.
I played a lot of golf over the years, and some people would be like, I had a pretty low handicap, and I played with my regular guys, and we all played pretty good. But then sometimes you'd end up playing with just whoever if you wanted to go out by yourself, and you'd end up with other people. And the thing I came to realize over the years is I really didn't care what your score was. Like if I could shoot 85 and you were shooting 115, I didn't care about that. All I cared about was if you knew the etiquette of the game. If you knew the etiquette of the game, I could play with anybody. Would that be a fair statement in model railroading? Like if somebody comes to your house and is not really a very good operator, but they know the etiquette of respect, and they know the etiquette of asking questions, and they know the etiquette of not just charging ahead when they don't know exactly what to do. Would that be a fair statement? It's the etiquette of the person that makes it easier to have that person come by as an operator? Did that even make sense? Did everybody leave?
Oh no, I think that's a very good analogy. If you got somebody who's interested and knows the rules of the game, as it were, you're going to enjoy it more. They're going to enjoy it more.
You can't coach attitude, and right. I really believe, and that's the case on the real railroad. When I hire someone, I hire for attitude. I believe that people make the railroad run. I want people that I can trust, people that are loyal, people that are respectful, but that are excited to learn. They're excited to jump in and make a difference. Take some risks and do it in the context of that etiquette. That's a perfect description, Lionel. That's exactly what we're talking about.
Okay. Yeah. And Dave, I think because I'm talking to you, I was able to put that into words. I think I think Bruce, we're going to have to put Dave on a pedestal.
I think so.
Yeah. And
a pedestal of low scores on the on the Kelly questions.
Yeah, that doesn't change. Don't piss us off.
Oh,
remember the rules we cited earlier.
Yeah, like don't.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, our pedestal's only about 3 inches high, so don't get too excited.
No, I think it's very nice of you to consider me for the pedestal. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, it's just like I think on the right day, Dave, you could easily just annoy the living crap out of me too. But generally, he seemed like a really good guy. I'm glad.
Again, it wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah. All right, we're going to stop now because we've done this for an hour and 6 minutes. I mean, holy mackerel, we got it. And we didn't even get to ask him about the heritage thing.
No.
And what were you going to say, Bruce?
Well, no, I was just saying, we kind of got through then what I want to do, but then, the heritage thing. So we'll have that later.
All right, let's have it. It was your idea to paint New Jersey locomotives in the heritage scheme?
Yes.
Wow.
I had an opportunity with my boss's boss and 2 other critical people in the company. And we got talking about stations, and it's a long story, like all of my stories, but the bottom line is it was the right group of people and the right circumstance. And I said, I know it's our 40th anniversary, and what NS did for their 30th anniversary was they decorated heritage locomotives. And the woman who was new to the idea of this said, "Heritage? Well, what do they look like?" And I said, "Well, they look like this." I gave her my phone. And one of the other guys that was in the group before said, "Yeah, they look like this." And we did this. And he was from Union Pacific. We did this on UP. And I said, it wouldn't take a whole lot of effort. I mean, we could probably do most of it in house. And she's like, "Well, that's a great idea. And in fact, there's a sponsor that sponsored us to do something for our 40th anniversary. So why don't you do it? Go ahead." And I said, "Okay." And so we assembled the team of knowledgeable experts, Rich being one of them, and people inside and outside the company. Mechanical department bought in. And lo and behold.
Can I interrupt for a minute again?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Don't forget where you were. Again, Rich Winiski. You know what? Here's a problem. Here's kind of what's wrong with me having a podcast, because sometimes my real personality it can rub people the wrong way. So I've had, and by now these discussions will have ended, but this is before the discussion started. Rich was one of the guys that helped you with the heritage paint schemes, and I invited him to be on the podcast, and all he could tell me was he wasn't an interesting person. Like, what am I dealing with this guy? Seriously, I mean,
you're dealing with one of the most humble, loyal, and honorable guys you'll ever come into contact with. But someone who's got a dry wit, a keen sense of sarcasm, and a horrible taste in terribly awful dad jokes.
Well, could you? Rich and I will be emailing back and forth. But could you? When do you think you'll see him again? Could you see
tomorrow
him
morning?
Okay. Could you?
Yeah.
He won't have received an email from me by tomorrow morning. Could you go in and just tell him that, I'm already really annoyed with him, and I'm not sure. Things could deteriorate rapidly from this point.
Okay. I'll give him the old heads up.
Yeah. Okay. So a series of people help you, Rich being one of them, help you, and help you how? Help you just figure out which locomotives to paint, or what?
I mean, I was with the right people at the right time to plant the seed, to get the idea started. And NJ Transit Mechanical Forces, Rich, one of Rich's contacts outside the company, a guy named Paul Tupacheski, who's another Onondaga cutoff regular, and is one of the guys that's at the head of the Erie-Lackawanna Historical Society. He helped tremendously with the artwork for the CNJ stuff. He actually has a decal company, Prime Mover Decals. And so he had a lot of the artwork that we needed to do CNJ 4109 and the Erie-Lackawanna 4519. So in 3 weeks' time, it was just an all hands on deck effort. NJ Transit Mechanical got on board. People that you wouldn't have thought of as railroad enthusiasts just jumped in, and the pride, the coming together of these rough and tumble guys that paint freight cars for a living, or passenger cars for a living, or repair locomotives for a living, or Rich who handles contracts, or me with stations. Everybody just put their differences aside, came together, agreed on artwork, made it happen.
And how many locomotives did you paint?
We painted one in-house, a GP40 PH2, one of the original CNJ ones, 4109, which made its first revenue run yesterday, and 2 more today, and it's beautiful.
So I'm looking at a picture of it right now. It is a sweet looking unit.
So this is just a very recent thing.
This was painted right at the end of September, and we literally finished it the day of the Family Day celebration, which is an annual employee celebration at NJ Transit that's put on by the unions and with volunteer money to celebrate NJ Transit employees and the work they put in for it. And it was unveiled. The decals were put on the night before this thing. The decals were put on October 4th. And it was unveiled October 5th, and now it's running its revenue service. They put a new HEP unit in it, new head and power unit. Okay. And it's because it's been so popular. And then we did one Alp 45.
All right, time out. What's a new head and power unit? What do you mean by that?
Head and power is the diesel generator, which runs separately from the diesel prime mover. The prime mover drives the wheels, gets the thing to move.
Right.
The head and power unit is a separate diesel engine that creates the electric power for the coaches behind it.
Okay.
So the HVAC, the light, all that kind of stuff comes from the head end power. Stuff that the steam generator used to do in the old school.
Okay. All right. Sure. And so and I don't want you to say anything that you don't feel comfortable telling us or anything like that, but roughly what would it cost to paint a locomotive?
I think paint, and this is just a general industry standard, paint would be about 20 to 30 grand. And a wrap, because the other two, we only painted the 4109. The other two were wraps, large decals that were put together by a professional company called Reidler Decal in Pennsylvania, who does all sorts of decals for industrial applications. Decaling a wrap would cost about probably 8-10 grand, something like that.
Okay.
And that's the one you put on the 2 electric units.
That's correct. PRR and the Erie Lackawanna. And the beautiful thing is, I mean, it's the quality of the printing is unbelievable. So to me, they look painted. They're guaranteed for 7 years. Guaranteed for 7 years. And all of the money for this was provided by sponsors to commemorate our 40th anniversary. So it was just the right timing, the right people, and a general manager in Ray Kenny, who's the general manager of NJ Transit Rail Operations right now. Ray, who's my boss's boss, Ray loves the railroad and said, "This is great. Go ahead." He just let us run with the ball, and the results are they speak for themselves. I'm thrilled.
And
what's the story on the high nose Jeep?
The high nose Jeep was one of the United Railway Historical Society's restored GP7s. That's its original CNJ number, and they let us borrow that GP7 and then one of the former Pennsylvania Railroad E8s. That's painted in the New Jersey DOT paint job. And so we had 5 heritage units together for this unveiling, 3 of them NJ Transit and 2 from the URHS collection.
Nice.
Super cool. I mean, I'm in my 20th year at Transit. The company turns 40 years old. And then I personally get to be involved in helping us repaint a GP40P, an original CNJ GP40P back to its original paint colors. It's not the exact blue, it's not the exact yellow. They painted the yellow, we decaled it. So it's a heritage scheme. We're honoring the heritage. It's not meant to be a restoration. But I am absolutely thrilled with how it came together and with how the guys came together, because it's about people. And you had a bunch of people that were really frustrated with the company who see this and they can say, wow, they really do care about their history. And it's like, you're darn right we care about our history. There's people here that really love what we're doing.
I think that's a great way to look at it. It shows that the New Jersey Transit isn't just, another day, another dollar. It's like they care about where they came from and who they were and stuff like that. So
absolutely, yes.
How did you decide? So how long? Okay, so why paint one and wrap a couple? What was the process that made the cost, or what?
Cost was part of it. The biggest part of it was the timeline. So, we over the years, we don't have an in-house paint facility on NJ Transit, so they had to craft one and put one together. And all the carmen that do the work at Hoboken were the guys that were assigned as part of the switcher program to go over and do the work on the GP40s. So we only have slots for one of them at a time anyway. But by the time everything was put in place, the funding was in place from the donors and all that was together, we decided on the artwork. We only had about 3 weeks to complete the whole project for all 3 engines.
Wow. So that was
it was crazy. They prepped and painted 4109 simultaneously while prepping and decaling with an outside vendor as part of that funding process, the 4519 and the 4636.
And the wraps, it's pretty early in the game to be asking this question, but do you foresee the one that's painted for New Jersey Central just to be left that way until it's time to be cleaned up again, or is there a plan to repaint it again back?
Our plan is to keep it as is as long as we can. Yeah. I mean, leadership changes at the top, and you never know what the priorities are going to be. This stuff is, it's a moving target, like an operating session. And so you take advantage of the opportunities you have, and this was just a perfect confluence. Right time, right opportunity, money that was dedicated to the anniversary celebration, and people that didn't get in the way of us honoring, the history of the railroads, the great railroads that have come before us.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sharp looking paint scheme. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love the New Jersey Central one. I love that it's been actually painted. And
Yeah, me too. And I have all these pictures on my cell phone of the process, because we would go over there every couple of days and check on the progress. And they'd ask, "Oh, where do you want this? Or is this the right color?" And like, yeah, we'd go back and forth. We checked with the historical societies that were locally. We've all got contacts in the historical societies. One of my former bosses, a fellow named Tom Gallo, he's in the CNJ Historical Society. He actually had the original EMD paint schematics on the linoleum, on the vellum drawings. So he gave me the drawings, and we used that to locate the decals and to size things out. So we drew on every expert resource we had to make sure we delivered something that made sense for everybody. And I'm just thrilled at how it came out.
all right, so there you've done it again. What are vellum drawings?
That's sort of a thin paper from the 1950s and 60s. Early architectural and mechanical drawings were done on that. It's
All
sort
right.
of a semi-translucent white paper.
Yeah, the drafting, originally a lot of it would have been pen and ink on linen, and then they developed vellum papers, which basically got through to the end of hand drawing things when CAD took over.
Right.
And can I ask a couple more questions, or do we have to stop?
I got to get up in a couple hours, so I probably should stop.
All right.
But I want to keep going. This is great.
All right, a couple more questions. We might as well get to an hour and 30 minutes, and then this will just be another episode. And we will actually have had somebody that's had 3 parts, one night right after the other. It's gonna be a true hat trick, Bruce.
Yes, it is the natural hat trick.
The natural hat trick, one right after the other. All right. So, do you get a sense from rail fans? This is kind of a two-parter. I mean, you are a rail fan. You're a model railroader. You're in the upper management of New Jersey Central or New Jersey Transit. Do you get a sense of where the rail fans are with this and how much they enjoy it and all that?
Yeah, I mean, there's always the negative Nancy's that are out there, of course, but the vast majority of the people we've seen commenting on Facebook, online, and of people that have reached out to me personally, and people that I've known, and also employees, and the most importantly, you've got some of the most frustrated union employees, engineers, conductors, people that you can tell they're carrying a load of baggage with them, and like wow, this is so great. Man, it's so good. Like one of these guys took a picture with me at Family Day, like union engineer with general superintendent of stations, like labor management and never the twain shall meet. And transit right now, it's no secret we're having struggles with signaling and engineer shortages. And it's been a hard couple of years. So for union and management to get together and agree on something, to me, is a very big deal. And this did it. It was my hope that it would do it, and sure enough, it brought us together. The rail fans, it's a hoot. There's a couple guys that say, "Oh, that's not the right blue. Why would you do it if it's not right?" And it's like the guys complaining about Jason's B36-7s. Oh, the steps aren't right. Are you kidding? I spent 40 hours kit bashing locomotives just a couple of years ago, and now they're coming out in plastic for $250 with sound. And you're going to complain? Like, people find reasons to be frustrated about anything. So, with the exception of people like that just are just a sad story, it's been universally positive.
And I see that you even have the original, you even got for the Jeep 40, you got like original or good. The number boards look like the original number boards when it came out of LaGrange.
Fascinating story. So, one of the yard masters.
Time out. I think you've been on long enough to know the rules about that.
Oh, I did it again.
Yeah, you tell this.
You know, son, I think he's been on long enough. He's probably got it right again.
That's true. It might be.
All right. I'll take it.
We're into a part of the rule book we've never ventured into, Bruce.
We're writing the rules as we go here.
Yeah, okay.
So one of the yard masters reached out, and another guy who enjoys the history of the whole thing and is a very good photographer, reached out to Rich Wisniewski and said, look, are they going to do the number boards? Rich said, I don't know. And the guy says, well, look, I'm good friends with Casey Thomason at Norfolk Southern. He does number boards on the side. He'll do them for this project. And we said, great. So Casey Thomason at Norfolk Southern, with a lot of credit, did an unbelievable job coming up with the original font, but with the current NJ Transit number 4109, because we wanted to put this thing back in revenue service. So we didn't change the number. The number is the NJ Transit number, not the CNJ number. So he came up with custom number boards in the original font that were included as project and were delivered the day before we unveiled it. He drove them up here personally.
Wow. So he made them somehow, or he knew the guy to make them?
I don't know exactly how it worked, but he was the one responsible for either making them or having them made. Yes.
Wow. So like,
it just shows it's the guys who love trains that can make a difference. It's wonderful. What an era when you can work with people like this. It's just great.
There's way more people. Two things. I guess there's not more people interested in trains than there were before that work on the one-to-one railroads, but they're becoming more and more prevalent as they kind of. I think it's the social media, and they can find each other, and they can see that it's okay to be a fan of their job. That's a good way to put it. You're a fan of your own job.
Yeah.
I think there's more and more of these guys are seeing that it's okay to do that.
I think so too, and I credit social media with that, and I credit, people starting to think a little bit more about people and less about projects. Look, do you think Steven Spielberg didn't love movies growing up as a kid?
Yeah.
The masters of anything are people that love it for one reason or another, and you have to trust those people to be leaders in the field. They have to be smart enough to not get themselves in trouble doing stupid stuff. You got to make sure you're not going to be running amok and taking pictures in front of a moving train or something. But look, if you don't love what you're doing, you're wasting a lot of time.
Yeah. All right. It's now the first Monday in March. So this started on the first Monday in February. Then it was on the second Monday in February. Now it's the first Monday in March. We have traveled through the life of Dave Abeles from one end to the other, Bruce, and it's a fascinating world. Bruce is falling asleep.
Oh no! I'm still staring at these pictures of these heritage units. It's fantastic.
I'm really thrilled at how they turned out. I'm really proud of the guys that came together to make it happen. It's just fantastic.
When exactly is the anniversary of the CNJ or the New Jersey Transit?
New Jersey Transit was created. It's got several parts to it. So the NJDOT was created NJ Transit in 1979, and they took over the buses and the trolleys and some other stuff that was going on. But Conrail in 1976 was charged with operating the commuter service in New Jersey. So Conrail and then Amtrak, of course, they already had the Northeast Corridor by that point because they were created in 1971. So that relationship continued for a couple of years until the state of New Jersey, because Conrail, it wasn't until Staggers, when they deregulated American railroading, that Conrail was able to divest itself of the commuter service. So NJDOT set up the funding after deregulation to create a New Jersey Transit Rail Operations, separate company under NJ Transit. And Rail Operations took over, I believe it was May of 1983. It was a date in May. I don't want to misquote the actual day.
Okay.
But it was a day in 1983 when NJ Transit Rail Operations started. So this year is the 40th anniversary of the company.
Right.
But in a couple of years, we're going to have the 40th anniversary of NJ Transit Rail Operations. And I think, let's just say we're working on a couple surprises that include heritage engines for that.
Yeah, and one of those surprises is I'll get to ride in the cab of some locomotive.
Well, you got to come to an operating session first.
All right, that sounds fair. That sounds fair.
That sounds very fair.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, an AML day out with riding with Dave up and down the NJ Transit would be good too.
I'm thinking.
So do the buses? Does each arm of NJ Transit, does it work as a separate company, or it's all amalgamated in, and it's just the different branches?
The operations are all separate, but they work together when needed to bail each other out when something goes wrong. If there's a bus accident in Lincoln Tunnel, then rail will cross on our bus tickets for bus customers, so bus people can ride rail for no additional cost. If there's a derailed train or something like that, then bus cross honors. If the signals are broken, bus will cross honor, that kind of stuff. But human resources, accounts payable, most of the capital engineering stuff, procurement, government and community relations, all that stuff is handled from NJ Transit Corporation. So NJ Transit Rail Operations has to work with corporate procurement to make a purchase, for example.
Okay, so yeah, so there's an umbrella company that all these other things run under. I think we could do a whole.
Correct. Yep.
I think we could do a whole show just about New Jersey Transit. And I'm going to leave with this final statement and your comments because I think because I'm exhausted, Bruce.
Oh yeah.
The natural. This is our first ever natural hat trick. I'm very excited. We need to get. I'm going to grab the puck before we go off the ice.
Yes, that's going in the trophy case.
Yeah. So the way you speak of all these guys you work with that are in upper management, it seems like New Jersey Transit, maybe it's changing or whatever, but it seems like you guys are an awfully dedicated bunch to make this company run as well as you can. Maybe let me start with this. I had this great conversation one night with Adam Pinellas, who's a conductor on the Amtrak, the California Zephyr, and Clem Harris, who's a locomotive engineer on the Southwest Chief. And I had this great conversation with these guys, and at the end of it, I mean, they started out as being, kind of cutting everything up and all that, but pretty quickly they talked about how seriously they take their job and how responsible they need to be to make it work well. And it sounds like you guys, the upper management of New Jersey Transit, it means a lot to you guys to produce a good product. Does that sound like anything?
That's exactly right. We love what we do, and we move 280,000 people to the most, and basically it's 280,000 trips, I should say. It's about 140,000 people each way every weekday. And that's the railroad alone. New Jersey Transit as a company moves almost 1 million people a day, or 1 million trips a day, I should say. And we take it very seriously. It's what we do, and our region does not work without mass transit. You literally cannot have the New York City economy function without commuters.
Right.
So it's central to our theme, and every day there's people doing heroic stuff to make it happen every day. So yeah, it's something we take a lot of pride in. It's something that's been very hard to watch get cut and get overly politicized, frankly. And so those are battles we have to fight, and we need good management and smart people to figure out how we're going to fund this going forward. But we still have good railroaders out there. You just have to let them railroad.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the people that from the political side of it, they need to realize that without New Jersey Transit in that particular area, or the Southeast Pennsylvania Transit Authority, I mean, without these companies and without this these systems, everything's going to come to a pretty much of a grinding halt.
It's not sustainable without mass transit. It wasn't the city. These cities didn't develop. The only reason they developed was because of mass transit on the water or on the rails. You can't do it all by yourself. You have to work together. It's just like the OC. It's just like NJ Transit. It's just like any real railroad anywhere. There's no lone wolves. Yeah. You have to work together to have a good operation. And we do it once a month on the Onondaga cutoff, and we do it every single day on NJ Transit.
Have you done any YouTube videos of your layout?
There's a few that are out there. I haven't done any myself yet, but there's a couple guys that have put some stuff up on the web, and it's funny. One of them is a cab ride, but it's from 6 or 7 years ago, and it's amazing how far the scenery has come since that cab ride. But it's out there. Again, if you Google it, it'll pop up on YouTube.
Well, you need to know, I've talked to Kaylee Zhang is one of the people that comes to mind. She's told me about how great your layout is. And anybody who's in the last little while, I've said, I've been talking to Dave Abeles, and am I saying it right now, right? Abeles.
Yep, that's right. Yep, you got it.
It's pretty easy, Abeles. So why have I struggled so much? Well, that's another story altogether. So, I mean, a lot of people are saying a lot of great things, but I think it's not just the layout. I think you need to be proud of the fact of the way you represent the hobby. I think that's really, really important.
Well, it's an honor to hear you say that, and I thank you. I thank you very much. It's something I've believed in my whole life, and the opportunity to be able to give back to it is an honor. It's fantastic.
All right, I'm going to let you go now because we all got to. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, right now it is 3:43 a.m. in the morning. We started so late.
It happens sometimes, but hey, that's why we have nighttime operating sessions.
Exactly. We're having a nighttime operating session. It's 3:43 for somebody in the AM who can't sleep and they've turned on the podcast. That's how many people are listening. Well, now why are you laughing about that?
Well, because I love the way you present things. I am right there with you, 100%. This is a lot of fun. I really appreciate you guys, rambling on with me. This has been a real privilege. Thank you.
Bruce, can you give out our email address?
Yes, our email address, because you want to congratulate everybody on the natural hat trick. Our email address, modeler'slife, modelers with one L, modeler'slife@gmail.com.
And we have a website, amodeler'slife.com. And if you go there, you will see 3 shows in a row featuring Dave Abeles. That's crazy. First time ever in the history of the AML network. We've been 5.5 years in, and this is the first time we've ever had 3 shows in a row with the same guest. And what's your official title?
General Superintendent of Stations for NJ Transit Rail Operations.
Yeah, he's the General Superintendent of Stations for the New Jersey Transit System. And his best friend is the guy that does the scheduling for the New Jersey Transit System. Wow.
That's true.
Yeah, and his second best friend, Rich, is kind of annoying the crap out of me, and him and I are gonna come to some sort of it's not gonna be pretty. I can tell you that.
I'll break the news soon tomorrow on the morning call. It'll be good.
Would you please? Just go, Rich, there's trouble a brewing, and its name is Lionel. Okay, and if you go on that page, this is a free podcast you're listening right now, but if you go on that page and on our homepage and scroll down a little bit, you'll see a Patreon. You click on that Patreon thing, and if you want more, you just go there, and for $5 a month, you get more stuff to listen to, and it's interesting. But as Kaylee, our pal Kaylee Zhang, who is an intricate part of the show, as she says, she refers to it as antics. So it's Kaylee's antics that you're going to listen to. There you go. I like that. I like the way she said it. She gave us all right. I think. Oh, so Dave, you've been on the show before. Do you know what comes next?
I do.
All right. So do you feel like you're ready, or do you need help, or do you need time to get ready? Or
I'm as ready as I'm going to be, but that probably means I'm going to need lots of help. But let's give it the old college try. Let's see what happens.
All right. Well, Dave, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life, and the sun slowly sets over the back 40, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say,
happy rails to you.
And now it's time for the New Jersey Transit Elevator Escalator Report. Whether you want it or not. Take it away, Dave.
Good morning, everybody. Plainfield westbound's out this morning for some door modifications. They're going to adjust some of the equipment hardware that came in yesterday, so that should be back later this afternoon. Ridgewood number 2 is out. Vendors en route to take a look at the doors on that one. Those doors are open. At Woodbridge, we had a report of an ADA customer stuck in the elevator. The vendor went there and found the elevator operating normally, so that's back in service. Newark Penn number 9 is out with a skirt panel replacement project, same as last week. And Secaucus number 2, that's one that's out for its step chain replacement and a lower carriage assembly adjustment. So that's still going to be with a good date there of December 1.
It's another Lincoln Homer.